Please be seated. Well, thank God that I'm not like that Pharisee. There are at least two things wrong with that statement, at least coming from me. First, it isn't true. I have too many things in common with the Pharisee for me to claim to not be like him. I am like him in ways good and bad, and probably more the latter. In fact, the only way I can definitively say that I am not like him is that I almost never fast, let alone twice a week. And second, even if I were nothing at all like the Pharisee, as soon as we thank God for not being like him, we become him. That is the trap this parable sets. Judging others, thinking that the lives we lead make us better in God's eyes than other people, was ultimately the Pharisees' downfall. And it can be our downfall as well, as soon as we pretend that we're better than he is and look down on him with disdain. Oversimplification is a big risk in parables. If we think we can reduce this one to Pharisee bad, tax collector good, be like him, we miss its texture. Parables are not fables. Our Pharisee and our tax collector are not one-dimensional caricatures. They, like all of us, are a mixture of good and bad. We do not want to be either just like or totally different than either of them. It is, after all, hard to find fault with the Pharisee for anything he did. We can probably take him at his word that he, by and large, obeys the law. He gives generously of his income, more than the law requires. And, at least in words, he thanks God for his circumstances. Those were all good things. We generally should want to be like that. The tax collector, on the other hand, does have some fundamental things right. He acknowledges his sinfulness and knows that he needs God's mercy. But he never says he repented. He doesn't promise to stop taking advantage of his people as a tax collector or to change his behaviors in any way. Surely, the idea of the parable is not to tell us to be just like him. He's not a perfect model for us to emulate. Nor, obviously, is the Pharisee. Although the very first words of his prayer were, "God, I thank you," his thanks have a very hollow ring because by the end of his spiel, it is pretty clear that he thinks that he deserves all the credit for the life he lives, and that makes him better in God's eyes than some other of God's children. What he misses is that ultimately it was God who made the life he lived possible. Yes, he apparently made some prudent choices about how to play the cards he was dealt, but who knows how the deck was stacked? To what extent was the clean life he claims to have lived the result of reverent strength of character? Or was it just the absence of compelling sinful opportunities at his door? As for the other guy, we have no idea what combination of circumstances conspired to have him end up as a tax collector. Was it just greedy pursuit of wealth? Or was it an act of desperation in response to hard times or Roman intimidation and threats? You can tell that he was feeling conflicted, maybe trapped by his circumstances. I think of myself. I grew up in a stable home with two loving parents, never in my life knowing food insecurity or having to worry about where I would live or ever facing any credible threat to my personal security. But even so, I managed to do some pretty shameful things along the way. Lord knows what I might have been capable of if I ever had really found myself with my back against the wall. The Pharisee had no right. I have no right. We none of us have any right to judge ourselves to be more deserving of God's grace than anyone else. And for that matter, just for the record, none of us have any cause to believe that God's mercy is any less available to us than to anyone else, something that the tax collector appears to have realized as well. Because it isn't about deserving. Just as the Pharisee was wrong in thinking that he deserves credit for the life he was able to live, we would be wrong to think that the tax collector went home justified because of something he did to deserve it. God doesn't work that way. The way these men ended up in the parable was not because of anything they did. They ended up where they were in spite of what they did. The Pharisee went home unjustified in spite of all of the good that he does. The other man went home justified in spite of all the wrong he's done. There is nothing we can do or need to do in order to earn God's favor. Jesus has already taken care of that for us all. And this ought to be very liberating. We don't have to worry about justifying ourselves. We can just let go of that. And when we let go of that, then we can also stop worrying about how we compare to the next guy or gal too. It's not a competition. Everybody can win. Like it or not, God's mercy is going to extend to people who, by our standards, don't particularly deserve it. But God's mercy is not going to be confined based on our assessment of who deserves it. And in that respect, that's who we should be like. The mercy we show must not be confined by our judgments about other people's deservedness. What we can do is simply take account of the many blessings that we have been given and be thankful for the undeserved gift that is. And we can show forth our joyful gratitude in return by generous living. This includes material giving, yes, and 'tis the season for that, they tell me, as well as giving back of our time and our talent too. But just as important as any of that, we can also show our gratefulness for God's undeserved blessings by showing forth a generous spirit for those around us. A generous spirit that, like the one God shows for us, does not turn on deservedness. A generous spirit that, unlike the Pharisee, looks on those around us not with disdain or smugness, but with compassion, loving kindness, and forgiveness. It is all the more crucial in these polarized times that this also include those that we may otherwise be so inclined to other based on their political views, religious stances, or party affiliation. That applies no matter how much we, like the Pharisee, may be convinced of the moral superiority of our position. We need to get over that. As one commentator noted, any time we divide our human family into groups of saints and sinners, we've aligned with the Pharisee. And, as this parable shows, when we draw a line dividing between who's in and who's out, we can be pretty sure that we'll find God on the other side of that line from us. Amen.
Amen.